Welcome, welcome, welcome to our very first ever episode of Living Legendary with Lady Sham and Baby Nigel. Say hi, Baby Nigel.
Wow.
That is Baby Nigel. Okay, so
That's not how I talk. I just made a baby voice.
Yeah, he just turned into the baby that he is. And we'll explain the meaning behind that name as we go. But really, what this podcast is, it is conversations that are legendary and conversations with legends. Would you agree, Nigel?
Well, we're speaking to further projects. Can we say the name?
Well, we can say for the very second episode, this is the first, but coming after this episode, we're going to give you Angeline. She is, if you don't know who that is, get on your Google right now. Type these letters, Angelyne. That's how she spells it. And you will see that she is a legend among legends. We hope to engage your interest with this. Really, me and Nigel ourselves, we know each other from doing bingo. I have a regular weekly drag queen bingo show at the Hood Bar and Pizza. If you've never been there, you need to go. It's in Palm Desert. And the Hood Bar and Pizza is really the friendliest little rock and roll dive bar this side of heaven. That's how I describe it.
We've been running a bingo show for the last 6 to 7 years in Palm Desert, California, at one of the dive bars, CBGBs, if you will, in the Coachella Valley.
That is absolutely true. I have a past really where I was raised in nightclubs. And I'll say I was going to nightclubs long before I was even old enough to be in them. And I remember these magical places that no longer exist. And I will say the Hood still retains that magic. When you walk into that bar, you feel like you're right back there in that sort of like Max's Kansas City, CBGBs, all those places that are long gone.
And so many bands have performed there, big and small, comedians alike. So many people have graced that stage. It would blow your mind there should be a book at some point.
I think you should say some of them right now.
Well, speaking about bands, it was very famous for a venue that brought a lot of punk rock to the desert, TSOL, that was performing there. And I actually had the honor of mixing them because I am also the engineer there. So I get to control their microphones and they were very easy to work with. Another group was the Addicts, a very legendary, which I'm sure we'll get into because I have some stories with them. The Addicts, English group. The Dead Kennedys,
Jello Biafra. Jello Biafra played there. I remember. I remember hearing about that, and my jaw hit the floor. I couldn't believe Jello Biafra was even in the desert.
Members of Queens of the Stone Age,
Nick Oliveri,
all sorts of things.
Nick Oliveri still plays there. You can see. In fact, I was there recently. I saw Nick Oliveri just standing on a stage with a guitar playing. It was incredible.
And then as far as comedians, I was able to bring Pauly Shore, and I sold the show out. Well, he sold the show out, but it was my promotion. So it was a great honor to have him, Eric Griffin, Ian Edwards, Dean Del Rey, just to name a few.
And Jamie Kennedy.
And Jamie Kennedy. That was a great one for me. And I actually still stay in contact as much as I can with him through Instagram. And he's a funny guy.
That was really a legendary time. And really, Pauly Shore, I would say, speaking of legends, Pauly, you are an absolute legend. I absolutely love and adore Pauly Shore. Anybody who grew up in the era, like I think it was like the very early 90s when Pauly was like an icon. And when I say icon, I mean icon like Madonna, Michael Jackson, like that level for a minute. That was Pauly. The whole pop culture watched him and saw him because he came up on MTV and he was just like a host that would introduce music videos. But he was so outrageous and funny. And then he got his own like spin-off movie and became like this huge, huge star. So to see him at the Hood was that was incredible how you pulled that off, Nigel.
Sure. And again, just going back to the beginning of our introduction, Baby Nigel as the handle that we'll be using for this show it came from Pauly. He called me Baby Nigel when he first met me. And we can get into that or we can get into all sorts of things.
I love that. Well, Nigel, here's what we're going to do for this first episode, okay? Because we want to have our listeners know us and feel like we're all friends here. So I'm going to go ahead and interview Nigel first, and then I'll turn it over to Nigel, and he'll interview me, okay? All right, Nigel, am I right in assuming, because I don't know if you've ever really told me this, are you a native to the Coachella Valley?
I've been here a very long time. I was not born here. I was born in Redlands, and then I moved to a town called Monrovia. But I've moved back and forth for years, and I am very much in love with the desert and been here since I was about 17. I stopped moving when I was 17, I should say.
Okay, so you are a musician, and Nigel is in one of the most popular bands in the desert rock scene. They are called Slipping into Darkness. They've been around for how long, Nigel?
Since 2007.
So that's almost literally, what, 15, almost 20 years? 15, I'm not good at math.
Yeah, I was 17 and I'm 32 and I'll be 33 at the end of March.
I see. Okay, well, we're not going to talk about my age on this interview. So I'm 133, but that's why we call him Baby Nigel compared to me. Nigel, I want to ask you also about really what it was like growing up, because you've lived in the Coachella Valley for a long time, and a lot of our listeners are in the Coachella Valley.
Well, just growing up, I was lucky enough to grow up as a skateboarder way before music. So, when most kids are like doing their homework or going to a park or playing video games, I was on the streets of our cities, not in a bummish way, but I was hopping fences, skateboarding, pools. I knew all the back streets. I knew the whole thing. So I really got to see the city through a skateboarder's eyes. And I think only a skateboarder would know what I'm talking about, because you look at architecture and you look at things differently. You look at the city differently when there's construction going on. You have a very limited window to use that property to, get some bruises and get some footage. Because I would be the guy that had the camera. I had a Hi8 video camera. This is like before the digital cameras came around, and we do skits. But I went out of my way to push myself to go after sponsorship and things like that. And skateboarding was my life, so I got to do that. Just seeing the city change. And I went to elementary school here, moved back and forth a couple times. Middle school, same thing. And then high school, I went to a different high school every year. So I went to almost every high school except for the East End ones.
Wow, so you really saw all parts of the valley.
Yes.
Okay, so I know that your band, Slipping into Darkness, you guys actually played at Coachella. What year was that?
That was 2013.
What was that like, playing in front of an audience that big? Was that the biggest audience you guys ever played?
It was the biggest platform, I'd say. We played the main stage, which is the same stage that the Red Hot Chili Peppers were playing the same day. So as I'm loading in my equipment, doing sound check, I'm staging my equipment. Flea's bass amp is behind mine, and the drums. Their whole back line was set up. Backline basically is their amps and all their equipment. But yeah, we played 2 weekends. It was great. We had our own little trailer and the whole nine. I think we were the only band to ever perform there without even having an album out, because Paul Toilette from Golden Voice heard our demo and got us on. We didn't do any competitions or things that bands do nowadays.
That's super old school, but that's how it was back in the day. Like, people didn't, and when I say back in the day, that's like 10 years ago. But I guess
2013, yeah.
Yeah, when Instagram and Facebook took over, now people just do things on social media.
Well, yeah, we did that. And then I played again in another group called the Little Red Spiders. That actually was through a competition. We won the Tachiva Festival. We got to play Coachella.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, Nigel, and you have now a new band. They're called Square Wave Monolith. Am I right?
Yeah, I have a group called Square Wave Monolith. It's my pet project, my solo project, if you will. I'm very honored to have worked with who I worked with. It was Cameron Webb was my producer. He's the producer for Motorhead, Social Distortion, a bunch of big bands, but mainly Motorhead. If you ever type in just Cameron Webb, Motorhead, he did their last like 15 records.
Wow.
And I play a Rickenbacker, and so Lemmy did too. So it was very cool and very profound time.
Who would you say is your favorite rock and roll musician, if you had to say, of all time?
Shoot, of all time, rock and roll, I would need like a handful. I couldn't just say one.
Okay. You know what? Knowing you, as long as I have, I feel I can answer this for you.
You could try.
Do you want me to try?
Sure.
Iggy Pop.
Yeah, you got it. Iggy Pop, T-Rex, David Bowie.
Alive.
Alice Cooper.
Has to be alive. Oh, Alice, of course.
Which I was able to meet him recently, and he's actually on our station here on KWXY, Nights with Alice Cooper. He's on our frequency. On
I love
92.3
Alice Cooper.
FM.
Alice, if you're listening, I don't know if you're married or not, but I'm available.
And I was impressed with him because he drives himself to the events and very independent. Which
Oh, please. He's totally my type. I love Alice. Alice, you're a legend. And if we ever could have a legend on the show, I would ask for Alice Cooper.
Yeah, but you hit it on the head. Iggy Pop, Raw Power, the Stooges.
I would agree with Mark Bolan. And of course, David Bowie. David Bowie was such a, both of them together at that time. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I'm just in love with those characters.
Well, How I know Nigel, as I said earlier, is Nigel is the DJ at the Hood Barn Pizza where we do Drag Queen Bingo. You can find us at 74360 Highway 111, the Hood Barn Pizza. Come and see us Fridays, 8 p.m. and Sunday at 3 p.m. We do 2 shows a week. So come on down and play bingo. If you can believe it, it's free to play, free to win. We love it when all our friends join in. So please come and see us there at the Hood Bar and Pizza.
Yeah, it's been 6 years of it, and I play music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, some ironic kind of songs, some soundtracks, just making things fun. And it's the most eclectic group of people you could imagine in the best way possible.
That bingo, I'll tell you this. This is what I say about show business, okay? I've been at this for some time. I mean, really, I have to say. And I had a call in 2016 to do a drag queen bingo show at the Hood Barn Pizza by the owner, Brad Guth. And Brad just seemed like a really sweet, amazing guy. He had just taken ownership of the bar and he said he wants to try this, this concept at this dive bar that's like a predominantly straight rock and roll dive bar. I, at the time, was just beginning sort of dipping my feet in reality television. I had done an episode of Botched. I was not the main focus of the story, but I was on an episode of Botched with my friend Kathy Brown, who I hope we can have later on the show. But Kathy was a Playboy model and she's just an amazing friend. And she was having her neck and nose done. So I came on Botched to be her friend and support her. And I was also on Vanderpump Rules briefly that year before, just giving Lisa Vanderpump some artwork because I do this artwork. For those of you that don't know, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically, I got this call. Do you want to do a drag queen bingo show? And it's very out of character for this bar. And of course, I was like, what does it pay? Because I need money. So Brad was very, very fair. And I said yes. And when we started, I would have to be honest, it was a bit awkward at first. But then just everybody took to it and everybody was so supportive and incredible. And we got people that were coming from all walks of life and all parts of life. And at this point, 6 years later, we have entertained thousands of people with that bingo. And Nigel has been the DJ the whole time. And now Nigel's integrated in the show. We have the DJ booth on the stage and Nigel helps me call the balls, especially on Sunday, because Sunday is me and Nigel just bouncing off each other because usually Friday nights, Brad, the owner, hosts with us, but Brad has to work because it's a dive bar. So Brad's like working on Sundays, bartending and stuff. But we love it if you guys come see us. And Nigel, honestly, my favorite thing about you, I think, is not only are you just a sweet, amazing, wonderful man, you are a father. Nigel's had a baby. Am I right?
I have a nine-month-old son, Elgin.
Elgin. So that's Nigel spelled backwards?
It's my name spelled backwards with the L and the E switched around.
That's amazing.
So Nigelelgin. But yeah, he was born in Joshua Tree, and it was a very profound thing. Not to get too deep with our listeners, but just while we're on the subject of life, I lost my father. And shortly after, realized I was going to have a son.
Nigel, actually, I remember the day your dad passed away because we were actually doing bingo.
Well, it was actually, I got the call. I was walking into bingo that, my mom called me and said, tomorrow you're going to have to drive to San Diego and say goodbye to your dad. It was very, very sudden. And I don't have to get into the whole thing, but it was one of those things where it was really terrible to walk in to work and hear that and have to go on with the show. But that just gets to show you that, I don't quit.
God, Nigel, I love you. That's what I remember was it was literally a night of a bingo and Nigel had like a strange look on his face. And I think it was Brad that told me. I mean, I always feel so blessed that I have both my parents. Everybody, unfortunately, I guess, is supposed to die. I don't want to ever, but I guess that's something that happens. I hope not to me, but it seems to happen.
Just basically saying that, our bingo is very much integrated into our life. I don't think I've had a day off. And I mean, maybe I've had a day off here and there because of special things like that. But we've been going hard for 6 years. And even when my son was born, I didn't take a day off. But I wouldn't change it for the world.
I wouldn't either. I come from Illinois. I come from a crazy work ethic. You're like born to work or something in the Midwest. That's just like the way people are from that area.
We're hard workers.
Hard workers.
And I think it took about 6 years for us to have the courage or just asking Brad to give us a tip jar. And that kind of changed everything. And the tip jar not just the money, it's more showing that these people appreciate it. When somebody puts a 20 or 100 or $1, it just goes to show that we're entertaining them.
Yeah, and if the IRS is looking, it's maybe like they put $1 in there.
We can edit that out for tax purposes.
I mean, no, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I don't know. Believe me, it's nothing to. It's enough to. Let's put it this way: tips are enough to like pay for gas and food, barely these days, and not even all the food.
We use all of our. We use all of our tips.
All the gas.
We use all of our tips to tip our bartenders.
Yeah, we do.
Try looking for it.
That's true. This is Living Legendary with Lady Sham and Baby Nigel on KWXY 92.3 FM. Thank you for tuning in. If you're looking to grow your business here in the Coachella Valley and advertise on Living Legendary Podcast with Lady Sham and Baby Nigel, just email us at livinglegendarypodcast@gmail.com. That's livinglegendarypodcast@gmail.com.
The tables have turned now, and I am controlling the microphone. Sham has a microphone as well, but mine will be used for questions. Sham, you grew up skateboarding, or you adopted skateboarding later on in life?
That's a crazy question to ask. I grew up in Peoria, Illinois, and honestly, I was introduced to the skateboard, I'd say, in 5th grade. And back then, it was not like skateboarding was cool. If you had a skateboard, you were like the rebel outcast, like people would like call the police if they saw you like skateboarding.
At the school I went to, skateboarding was very much of an outcast type of thing, and I would always be the skateboarder that would have to defend the friends, defend our fashion of our tight pants and all our, our punk rock look. And I'd end up having to physically fist fight people over it. Thankfully, I won those ones, and just letting you know that it was a very real issue. Skateboarding was not accepted as it is today.
No, absolutely not. It certainly changed. I left Illinois at the age, I would say, of 12 years old or something, and we went to California. My family moved there. I left my parents' house really early. I left when I was like 17 years old. I went right to San Francisco. And the first thing I did in San Francisco, I knew I wanted to be like an artist. So those of you that don't know that are listening, I'm really, if you were to like Google me, my first name is Sham, Sham, like shampoo without the poo. And my last name is Ibrahim. That's like Abraham, but with eyes, Ibrahim. I apologize for my name. It's very confusing, but you can look me up. I've done a lot of artwork for years, and I've given portraits to a lot of celebrities, including Snoop Dogg, Katy Perry. A lot of different people have had my art, and I've been blessed in having appearances on different reality shows. So I met Nigel, as we said earlier, through Bingo. And I would say the only thing that I really want to talk about now in terms of me, because I feel like you guys are going to get to know me more.
Sham's now interviewing herself.
Well, I don't know what to say.
Well,
Nigel.
let me ask the question.
Go ahead.
Sham was taking control, and that's fine.
I'm sorry. I'm very controlling.
So skateboarding, we've addressed that. Now, music, because we like a lot of the same types of music.
We do. And
also we show each other music that we just happen to like. So let's talk about punk rock. Let's talk about rock and roll. Let's talk about glam. Let's talk about whatever music.
Go ahead.
I know you know every NWA song. You go deep on all genres. So I'd like to get into the punk rock stuff, because that's, I think, where a lot of kids come from.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll say this. If you mentioned NWA, I mean, I think there's nobody more punk rock than NWA. And when I was in Illinois, I had an older cousin that had a cassette tape for Straight Outta Compton, and he gave it to me. And I was strictly forbidden from listening to it by I had very strict parents. So every time my parents left, I turned that thing on. And I had that whole album memorized. And it gave me a glimpse, because like I'm a kid growing up in Illinois, right? And it just gave me a glimpse into a world that was not my reality, like gangster rap and, like the things they rapped about, like police brutality, that song, F the Police. It was like, I didn't even know such a thing existed. So it was almost like raising my consciousness and educating me.
Yeah, the streets.
The street.
So NWA, you said they are very punk rock, and I think a lot of people would say that their voice is very punk rock.
I mean, Eazy-E started NWA selling crack. He was a crack dealer, and he used the money from selling crack to fund the record label, according to at least the legends that I've seen about the band. That's pretty punk rock.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a lot of guys that still follow that practice, but maybe they're not that
on
big.
a bigger scale.
On a bigger scale, yeah. So Iggy Pop, we have a deep admiration for Iggy Pop. Where does that stand with you?
I would say all my admiration for glam rock came after I left my parents' house when I was like 17. I went to San Francisco and I had, I guess I can say it now because it's a long time ago. So no statute of limitations. I had a fake ID. I had a fake ID and I used this fake ID to go to all the nightclubs in San Francisco. I had left my parents' house. I wanted to be a club kid. I saw this life of club kids. I want to be a club kid. So back then, the thing was glam rock. Glam rock was like the big, every nightclub was playing it. And I got a job at 18 the following year of just going to nightclubs and wearing makeup and dressing up. And with this crazy fake ID, I started being a go-go dancer. And I danced to Iggy Pop, T-Rex, David Bowie. It was like an education straight up out the gate. And the club was called 16. It was in San Francisco. It was run by a guy named Omar and a girl named Jenny. And they hired me. They were amazing, cool people. Honestly, I mean, I hope as this podcast evolves, I can bring some of the people that I'm about to mention right now on the show. But the people in San Francisco that really adopted me, I would say, was this incredible scene of drag queens. And there was a club called The Stud. And there were drag shows that I would go to and see. And you would think that that would be like the worst thing for a kid that left home to go. But it was honestly the best environment I could ever be in. And the people that were running that scene, there was a drag queen named Heclina, Juanita Moore. They're still to this day like ruling San Francisco. And there was a girl named Anna, Anna Matronic, who later, now she's in a band called Scissor Sisters. They're one of the most legendary, amazing electro bands from the 2000 era. And Anna was basically like a female-born drag queen. When you see her perform, you thought you were seeing Madonna or Janet Jackson or something. She was just incredible. She would have the whole audience mesmerized by her performance. So she was nice enough. She made her own nights at the Stud and she let me perform. And to me, being a fan of hers, it was so incredible. And my name, Lady Sham, if you want to know where it comes from, my name, Lady Sham, is a tribute to the most famous drag queen of that era in San Francisco. Her name was Steve Lady. Steve Lady was the reigning drag queen, and Steve Lady passed away, I think it was about 2010. But Steve Lady was just the most incredible person on the scene. You would see Steve Lady, you would think you were seeing Barbara Streisand or something. You would freeze and everybody would talk about her. And she was like the star of the town. Like if you think of the biggest star of Hollywood, she was like the biggest star of San Francisco to me as a young drag queen.
I've had some good times in San Francisco, and the only times I've ever been there is when I performed. One time, going back to the punk stuff, the Addicts, they invited Slipping to Darkness to go on tour with them. And one of the dates was in San Francisco at the Great American Music Hall. And it was a beautiful venue, a very historic venue. Just Google the Great American Music Hall.
I saw Nigel. I saw Blur and Suede and all those bands play there when I was literally like 14 years old.
Well, then you know, I'm preaching to you.
Oh, Nigel, that place is amazing. That and why am I drawing a blank here? It's because we're fried. We honestly today, you guys, just so you know, just because we're going to be real with you, we did bingo prior to this. So we came straight from the bingo here to record this because me and Nigel were like, let's just do this. We've been talking about doing a podcast and we're going to do it. And we wanted on our first episode just to briefly kind of you guys like get to know us.
This is, purely introduction. As the episodes grow and continue, our lives will unfold to the listener.
And one thing I really want to tell everybody, all my listeners, everybody that's listening, please, I need every single person here that has a cable subscription to tune into MTV for Catfish. You will see me on that episode, and on that episode, you will find out, am I a cat or a fish? I've made several appearances on reality TV, and this one was the most crazy thing I have ever done.
Yeah, and the production actually came to the studios in which we are recording now, here in Cathedral City. So when you do tune in, you can see the building in which Sham and I are speaking.
Yes. And let me say, I've done a lot of reality shows, like I said. Baby, let me tell you, I'm not saying that these reality shows are fake, because they are not. When I'm angry, I'm angry. But on other shows that I've been on, the producers will say, please talk about A, B, C, and D. They will say, could you, sort of repeat that? You'll repeat things and, almost like they're...
Take 2, take 3.
Thank you. And there's a makeup artist and a hairstylist there, usually. On this Catfish, there was not one of those things going on. I basically gave these people the situation, and they showed up at my house with like 20 cameras. So I'm a little nervous. On the first day, I looked, know what was happening. And then,
It's reality television.
yeah, this is the most real reality thing I've done, I would say, because reality TV, it's still television. So there's an element of who knows.
Well, all I can say is congratulations
Thank you, Nigel.
for that. Because
I don't know if it's congratulations or not. Watch the episode and see.
well, I just think
I'm scared.
I feel like that's just right up your alley. Is and then now
I hope so. I'll say this:
network TV.
God bless anybody that gives me a chance. First and foremost, I'm an artist, and as an artist, I'm nothing without people that see my art. And I'm definitely a performer. Please come see me perform at the Hood Bar and Pizza.
You just cast a wide net globally because it's a network. And hopefully these listeners can tune into the show.
Please tune in and also
tune in and leave a comment or send us an email.
Yes, send us an email. Please be in touch.
What do you think of the episode?
Tell us what you think of the episode. Tell us what you think of the podcast. Please email us. We really appreciate all our listeners. Thank you so much to listening to Living Legendary with Lady Sham and Baby Nigel.